When you mention Gen V, I understand it's Generation V. What is Generation V?
Well, V stands for Vietnam anyway, so we want to call them Gen V because they represent the young kind of population of Vietnam, and they represent a new generation of Vietnam.
Why are you tracking Gen V?
We were tracking Gen V defined as youth from 15 to 24 years old because that's the hardcore youth segment, as you can see. The simple reason why is because a lot of manufacturers and marketers in Vietnam, as well as those who are considering to enter the Vietnam market, they want to understand this particular group of consumers.
This particular group is very easily influenced.
Exactly.
And strategically, it would be making more sense for advertisers to target this particular group, waiting for them to migrate into the prime consumer age and then grab the revenue from there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I can give you a couple of examples into that.
Great.
A famous, an international kind of fem care manufacturer in Vietnam, they have started introducing tampons into the market.
Yeah.
And you know, tampon is such a new, innovative kind of category and very unfamiliar to most Vietnamese females, right? And they decided to start it out with the 15 to 24 years old consumers because they know that for such categories, the young consumers would be the first ones who are daring to try it, to insert that into their body, and to overcome all of the preconceptions that might exist.
I understand that you break down Gen V into 3 different subgroups again, but this time according to their psychographic characteristics. Can you give us some information about that?
Well, in the GenV study that you mentioned, we broke them down into basically 3 groups of consumers. The first group is uber moderns. We call them uber moderns. And then
like extremely modern people.
Yeah, you guess what it means already. And then the second group will be Gen V regulars, and the name says it all, right?
Yeah.
And the third one is in between. One more time, the name dictates their characteristics.
Yeah.
So the urban modern consumers would be the most experimentally, the most adaptive group of consumers, and they are living a very multidimensional life. They are the most extroverted group of consumers, the most outgoing consumers, and they are also users of multimedia services a lot too. And whereas the Gen V regulars would be more conservative and the traditional values are still shaping them a lot. They spend more time in home than our kind and less socializing than the open moderns. The in-between consumers have quite similar mindsets to the open moderns, but they still sort of like not as extroverts and not as experimentative as the open moderns. That's why we put them in between.
Having said that though, if I am an advertiser and I'm targeting Gen V as my target market, what am I going to do? Because they are very different in 3 different subgroups. How am I going to appeal to them all?
What I can say is most marketers, when they target Gen V in Vietnam, they would start out with the uber moderns. Why? Because uber moderns tend to be the opinion leaders. And they have a lot of influences on the other groups of consumers. So if marketers can build up a successful industry that attracts the upper moderns, then they are very likely to attract the other groups of consumers as well. Because the Gen V regulars, for example, they would look up to the upper moderns because they tend to be later adopters, and they wait for the upper moderns to try and to experiment, and then they follow.
There is a risk in terms of communication, I think, between being very edgy in your communication and being aspirational to the regulars as well. What's your point of view on that?
That's one of the most common concerns of marketers and also advertisers when talking to upper moderns, because you need to attract upper moderns, but you can't alienate the other group of consumers, the 4 to 8% of Gen V regulars that I've just talked about. And that's why our clients, when they come to Vietnam, they would like to look at both urban models and GenV regulars in terms of their reactions on the communications. For example, they would test the storyboards or the excerpts with the urban moderns to find out what they think and to get their inputs for the advertising. But then, to be safe, they would then test the TVC or the finished film one more time with the GenV regulars, just to make sure that the GenV regulars are buying into the ideology and there's no cross-negative kind of identified.
Let me take us back one generation to yours and my generation, and our values and aspirations were very, very different from what the current generation is having. In your opinion, what are the key differences between the two generations, do you think?
Well, the most prominent difference would be that the Vietnamese youth today, they have so much information. They have access to a variety of sources of information. They now have cable TV, they've got internet, and they can use multimedia services like GBIS or 3G with their mobile phones. They are very updated. They know what's going on in Vietnam and also in the world. But they are also more easily influenced by other cultures' values. And you have seen the influence of the Hallyu or the Korean wave in Vietnam, right? From the way they dress, the way they wear makeup, to the foods and brands they are consuming. The other difference is now they have a higher level of consumerism than we used to be. I think it's because they have a strong urge to indulge themselves. It's the sense of instant gratification, which we didn't have in our generation.
It seems to me, though, that this particular GenV generation is what I call a trapped generation. Trapped in between the past of values and traditions passed on by their parents, and trapped in between the present with a lot of exposure to media and a lot of the westernized sort of characteristics. What is your view on that?
That's true. That's what we call duality kind of concept. And a lot of marketers have been talking about this too, that Vietnamese youths are still very much at the transition stage. And they want to do what they like and have as much freedom as they want. But they're also aware of the fact that they can't upset their parents.
Which they still look at their parents as their idols?
Well, the truth is they do.
They do.
They do. Interesting, right? Sometimes when we ask them, so who are your idols in life? Top of mind, they would talk about international icons of success, like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. But then when we ask who else, then they would talk about their parents, their uncles, the close ones. But they only talk about those when they are also icons of success. And success here simply means that parents have gone through a tough time and they strive hard to overcome those toughnesses, and now they have a decent life, their kids have a good life. That's what they call success from their parents.
Now, interestingly, what I would think is that for such a generation of having individuality and a lot of freedom of expression, they would probably idolize models or singers or movie stars, and that's not the case. Why is that?
Well, if you talk to them and ask them what celebrities they like, then you might hear names like Miley Cyrus or Linkin Park. But when you talk about who they idolize, then that would be Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, or Đăng Lê Nguyên Vũ as an icon of local success. And why so? Well, I think that's because of the Vietnamese essence that's deep inside every single Vietnamese person, no matter what their age is. Because we grow up and we are taught that we need to strive hard in life. No pain, no gain.